there, and welcome to Roundtable here on Telil Community Television. I'm your host, Adam Cook. This week, we're going to catch you up on a number of stories that we've been following for quite some time now here in the Telil News Division. Everything from physician recruitment to renewable energy, including green hydrogen, as well as invasive species on Alma Dam and food banks in Richmond County. But we're going to begin with another look at affordable housing, specifically on an affordable housing project that hopes to break ground this coming spring. Rochelle Sampson is a representative of SRD International. She made an appearance before Richmond Municipal Council's Committee of the Whole meeting that took place late last week to update Council on the project and see if Council could provide some support in terms of being able to provide water and sewer service to the new housing development. What did Municipal Council officials have to say? Well, we'll find out in just a moment. First of all, here is Rochelle Sampson's presentation to Council in its entirety.
Hello everybody, my name is Rochelle Sampson. I'm here on behalf of SRD International, who's a local developer. Some of you may know me, some of you haven't. Back in November of 2020, so it's been about 3 years now, I had talked about an affordable housing development on Grandick Road. So I'm here to circle back and give you guys an update and chat with you guys about that today. So where we left off was I had done a presentation. We had determined that the zoning was incorrect at the time, that you could not build multi-units on one piece of property. So SRD was instructed to go work with EDPC to amend the bylaw and figure that out. So the conclusion there was that we did that. It took us a year, which was, a bit of a shock, but it got done. And so now we have to apply for a development agreement, which is fine, but it also comes with its own set of checklists that you have to complete, things that might cost money and things that you have to do. So that takes some time as well. Chris Boudreau, the engineer of the county, had done a presentation to council on the cost to extend water and sewer to the property. So he had provided, I think, 3 different options. One was to just do it to the 2 first properties that we're looking at developing. Another option was to run it the rest of the way down the property. And I think there was a third. I know there was 3 cost points, but I can circle back to that once I pull up that email. So to my knowledge, it was supposed to go maybe to like a bylaw meeting to be discussed because it was a project over a certain amount of money. So in order for the county to consider providing assistance to us, they had to bring it to the meeting for further discussion. And from what I know, that didn't go anywhere. So it just didn't happen. So to give you an update, we have increased the amount of units that we're looking to provide. We're looking to build 2 units at 12 units each side by side, which is a total of 24 affordable housing units for the county. As you know, the costs have increased since 2020, so we're in a bit of a different ballgame right now. But the affordable housing crisis has continued and is definitely prominent in our small town. So it's definitely still needed. Our new timeline is the spring, so we're looking to break ground in spring of 2024. We have an affordable housing application going in probably within the next week or so, and as well as CMHC. So that covers the provincial and the federal contributions. So to explain affordable housing a little bit to community members and to council, affordable housing is different than regular housing. Affordable housing, you are capped at how much you can charge for rent. So to keep it affordable for the people who are going to live there, you can't just charge whatever you'd like. You have guidelines and you have boundaries that you have to stay within to ensure that it's affordable. And that's really the market that we're trying to reach. We are not looking at making above affordable housing. We're looking to help the low-income earners, the seniors who are on a pension, and the people who work seasonally, just people who are trying to just not spend their whole paycheck on rent at this point. So in order to keep rents low, we need to keep our construction costs low. So that's kind of the bounce back between the two. So we can't offer affordable rents if it costs us an excessive amount of money to build these units. So the project is currently valued at $6 million. We as a developer are required to put in 20% right off the cuff as equity. So you're looking at about 1.2. So affordable housing also is not a super lucrative investment. You're looking at about a 30-year return, and at that, you're still it's not big money coming in. It's still affordable rents that are coming in even once you've paid off your building. So it's a different game altogether than just regular renting. So it's really imperative for all levels of government to chip in to ensure that the cost of this building and this development is affordable. So in conclusion, we need to finalize a plan to extend water and sewer to this property because we have yet to do that. So we are looking for a definitive answer from the council, from the county, if you guys are interested in partnering with us on this project, as we have provincial government, we have the federal government in play already. So there's a couple of options on how you can jump in, and I can pitch them to you guys, and you guys can let me know what you also have available to you. So the development of building our own water and sewer system is at $150,000 to $200,000 to build our own, and we're about 175 meters from the main. So from what I understand, there's a capital growth fund that the council has access to apply for. And so one option is that you could apply to, the council could apply to extend the water and sewer themselves. It would be their project to extend the sewer. It would service these lots, and these lots are designated to affordable housing. The county could apply to that same fund to help an affordable housing developer with the cost of installing their own water and sewer system. We could look at helping to maintain or service the system. We could, if we're going to put our own system in there, you could consider not charging us for the hookup to the main. We chatted with other municipalities who have recently completed some housing development projects with local developers, and they've granted back some of the funds that it was cost, and it was, I think, in relation to, the tax portion. They gave them back the money, the construction tax portion of the expense, and they covered their cost of permits during the construction phase as well. So in conclusion, it's been 3 years since we had brought this project to your guys' attention. In those 3 years, we've still been fighting to kind of move it along. It is a little bit frustrating, the amount of hoops that we've had to jump through to try to bridge a gap of affordable housing in the community. It's cost us time, it's cost us funds, we've had to develop plans, we've had to get permits, we've had to do quite a few things. So we've been really pushing forward. So we're really looking to understand if the county is interested in being a partner on this project, and we're looking to determine this within a very short timeline, as we're looking to break ground in the spring. But without the county, it's going to be really hard to keep this project affordable, which, could then deter us from being able to complete this project at all.
When I look at the Housing Nova Scotia report that just came out, and you look at a gap of 370 units, you guys are talking 24 units, and I think you had mentioned there are 7 in the future. For me, 31 units is 8% of that 370 gap. That's a huge number, in my opinion, right? So for us, I think we got to jump on this train, right? This problem ain't going anywhere. So, you look, and I think the number is 515 units, before 2027. So this number is just getting worse. So for me, I would like to see us look into CEO. I know that we had looked into the sidewalk project here at Kalbapur, and we had worked with our Director of Public Works to see if that capital growth fund was eligible, and if we could get a piece of that $32 million pie. I would like to request that same approach with this project to see if, that project and running that water and sewer for this project would fit in the capital growth fund, right? To see if, again, we can source some of that $32 million pie to see if we can help out SRD International with this project, because I think we got to move these projects forward, and we got to hop on the train ASAP, in my opinion, right?
Okay, thanks, Deputy Warden. And I really do appreciate the urgency of the issue. It's certainly something the Housing Coalition has got on its radar, front and center. And I agree with you, the pace of government is frustratingly slow. I don't know. Anyway, I can agree with you on that for sure. I think, having chatted with staff about this, one of the things that we need to look into in order to kind of move anything forward is to understand whether or not the water and sewer system here can handle the capacity of the kind of development you're talking about. So we know that. So we're looking to, eventually replace the system that we have here. It's a multi-million dollar project. I'm thinking, is it in the 20 million? Is 15 million dollar range, because right now it's not operating even right now the way that it needs to. So there's some concern around that, I think, from staff's perspective. But at the end of the day, that is something that we can look into. So and in terms of how we could contribute or how we might be able to access that capital growth fund to help, whether it's something independent so that it doesn't put that additional strain, or whether it somehow does have a hookup too, then we need to look at investigating that. We had agreed to do that through policy. We're going to accelerate that to the top of the list. We've talked about that. But, for right now, I think we need to do a little bit more investigation into what the system could potentially handle in terms of that kind of a block of that many units, right, being able to draw on it. So I don't know, Troy, could I maybe ask you to comment on that, about how we might go about that, or if you've looked into that? Yeah.
Sure. Thank you for coming in. Again, we have a couple hurdles to cross as well, where when we go into capital, it's usually restricted to items on our capital plan as well. So that's another hurdle we have to cross as well. But the policy, again, we just had policy before committee of the whole tonight, and I asked council if we could rearrange things so that we could look at sale of municipal land and working with developers. There was a policy that used to exist here that got rescinded years ago, to see if that can be looked at again, because right now we don't have that policy, but doesn't mean we can't make one, and council can't make decisions to help and assist. We saw that last year when the other money came available for this one as well, but this one was on our capital plan as well, right? So I think we would just want to take it back, let staff look at all the options we have and come back to council. And I don't know if we could do it for the December meeting, but certainly we could for January meeting.
Maybe just to keep the pace moving, if we could do an update in December, so that we have some kind of information before we go into the break, even if it's just in terms of what we think a timeline might be. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think I'm seeing some nodding heads around the table. We're very interested in supporting this type of a project. We just need to make sure that we don't break something while we're trying to do that, right? So if we could kind of maybe get a quick little check-in on it in December, so we'll make sure that it comes up on the agenda. Councillor Mel.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just wanted to make a comment, because I think, Rochelle, like in your presentation, you had just made a comment that you talked with us about it in November in terms of what we could do within our bylaws. So I did do a little bit of research, and I know that we did discuss it in early 2021. I think it was like February or something, and we did have like a pretty robust conversation from what I recall. I'd have to dig out my notes, but I think the concern at that time was not about, is it important to support projects like yours, but the bigger picture, which involves A, can systems manage it, but also B, the precedent setting and like where we could find ourselves rolling. So, today you're coming to us with one project with a certain potential budget. We have these funds that potentially could be, you know what I mean? But what do we do when it's 2 years later and we don't have those pots of funds, or we don't have the ability? Like, it's a murky place that we need to work through a little bit better. And I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, others at the table, but I think at that time we just felt like it was a bigger fish than we could fry financially. And I think that's where it ended up sitting, if I recall. Again, it's been, like you said, it's been almost 3 years, but I did, when I had read your briefing note for your presentation, I was like, I'm pretty sure we talked about that. And like I said, I did do some research and did see that in December we discussed it, and then in February we discussed it again. So don't think that when you left we just said, we're good. We knew we did certainly take the conversation seriously.
And I will say too, since then, because I mean, we were really concerned about fiscal, capacity and systems capacity, but there are some new funds available now that didn't exist then, which may make it more possible for us to participate. So, we'll re-examine it with that lens and considering the deputy warden's recommendation there too.
I think an apology is probably because you're right. When you look back, and Councillor Sampson, you are right as well. But when you look back, we kind of dropped the ball from 3 years ago to now because it seemed to have slipped the slope. And then again, funding might have been hard or difficult, but it seems like we didn't reach out to you or to continue to grasp the funding. So I think we do have to move it definitely to the top of the list. And again, great on you for continuing the last 2 years to move forward. And I think it's one of those things that we do have to jump on any funding available. One question I do have, you indicated 150 to 200,000 to build your own. So I presume that's if you take the bull by the horns kind of deal, dig it up, put in the pipes, and so I don't know how that process works through.
So we have been working with Chris a little bit and on the process of having to submit an application of the system that we are going to build. We have to submit plans and do all those development ideas, submit it for approval so that Chris can approve to make sure that it fits the bill and would run. Couple of side notes. One, we've continued to work on this for multiple reasons, but a really high one being that we are seeing, older generations of people having to leave their homes and move to places where they no longer have their family, their culture, they can't speak French. So it comes from a place of not just developing for, money in the long term, but it comes from a place of I want to live here, I want to love living here, and I want the people who I love to live here. So it really comes from there. And from a development standpoint, we would have probably developed a significant more amount of units if it wasn't such a hard process. Every time you go to try to do something, it feels like you hit a wall and you got to go talk to somebody else, and you hit another wall and you got to make an agreement with somebody else. So it's definitely frustrating, and I can understand why there's not a lot of developers. But this is what we do, and we've done it, and we continue to do it because we know that there's a bigger benefit at the other side. And so that's really where we're coming from.
Okay, thanks, Rochelle. I think we'll have to leave it there, and we'll, definitely commit to checking back in with you, and we'll do a little update maybe at each meeting to try to make sure that we keep some pace on the progress of this. Okay?
Yeah, the main point is just we just need to know if you're in or you're out, because we just don't want to keep doing the things that we're doing if we can't afford it. So we just kind of need to know where that contribution lies.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now, if you watched last week's episode of Roundtable here on Tell Ill, you might remember that we had a story about a drive to be able to bring a new doctor to Port Hawkesbury. The municipal councils in Port Hawkesbury and Richmond County were asked to provide letters of support by the Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health Committee in terms of getting a new doctor located in Port Hawkesbury that would serve people around the Strait Area. Well, a similar request has come forward from the Dr. William B. Kingston Memorial Health Centre in Lordways. Specifically, they're looking for the support of Richmond Municipal Council to be able to bring a new physician to that facility. Here is Richmond Warden Amanda Mumberket explaining what's going on.
I did mention a letter of support for a physician to be located at the Dr. Kingston Memorial Community Health Centre. Essentially this is a physician that was looking to locate in the area. But sometimes they don't get to select where they're going to be located because if they're involved in the Practice Ready Assessment Program, the PRAP program we call it. So what we've done is kind of assumed a little bit of a community campaign to encourage that, the powers that be to allow that physician to locate here. And certainly I took the opportunity to outline what it would mean for the health centre as well. Councillors would have a copy of that. So hopefully we'll get a good result on that.
Regular viewers of Tell Ill Community Television might remember that back in June, we had extensive coverage of the issue of an invasive species in Isle Madame, specifically Woodland Angelica, known more formally as Angelica sylvestris. In June, the Nova Scotia Invasive Species Council partnered with the Isle Madame Garden Club to set up a public information forum about the presence and danger of Woodland Angelica in Richmond County. Now we have a follow-up on that issue as presented at the latest Committee of the Whole meeting for Richmond Municipal Council. You're going to hear from two representatives of the Isle Madame Garden Club, including Claire Doyle, who is the club chair. Here's how it all broke down at last week's Committee of the Whole meeting at the Richmond Municipal Building in Ayrshire.
So my name is Claire Doyle, and I'm chairperson of the Isle Madame Garden Club. And to my left is Bridget Sprouse. She's also a member of our garden club. And Bridget provided the technical assistance to put together the presentation tonight, and she'll be sharing that with us. So we thank you for inviting us to the table this evening. I'd like to begin by saying just a few words about the garden club. We're a registered entity. And we've been registered with joint stock since 2018, presently we have 41 club members, garden club members, and we belong to the Nova Scotia Association of Garden Clubs, and we also belong to a network of garden clubs throughout Cape Breton. Our mandate is to encourage the love of gardening. And I think everybody loves gardening, especially since 2020, since the pandemic. There was an explosion of people, taking gardens in. So we do, promote gardening through different activities. We offer gardening tips on our Isle Madame Garden Club Facebook page. We provide educational tips there, and that's open to the members, but it's also open to the community. We host plant sales, and we do seed exchanges, and we create gardening events, gardening fun events, and we partner with the Rocky Bay Irish Club. We have a community garden there, and they allow us to use their space and to use their land, and so we have a very good relationship with the Rocky Bay Irish Club. And we also are trying to establish a daffodil trail on Isle Madame, and we've been promoting that for the past few years, where we encourage individuals to plant daffodils. It's the first flower that kind of comes out in the spring, and it's colorful, and it brightens us up after a long winter. And we've had a good partnership with the municipality, because the municipality has bought some daffodils from us, and they purchase the daffodils and we plant them. So it's a good partnership. And if you guys notice in the spring, through in Ayrshire on the Main, where you people have beautiful gardens there, the daffodils are popping up, and it's really quite lovely to see them. At the beginning of June, they last for 3 weeks, and it's kind of the beginning of the gardening season. So yeah. Our presentation this evening is on that invasive weed called Woodland Angelica, and it's found abundantly throughout Richmond County, everywhere, but particularly we think on Isle Madame, because Isle Madame is seeing an infestation of it. And I don't know, I think maybe it's because we're near the waterway, probably, I'm not sure. But it is everywhere, that's for sure. And so you'll find them in the ditches, and you'll find them in open fields and private woodlands, on the beach now, that you're seeing them on the beach. They're everywhere.
We're here to talk about Woodland Angelica, and I'm sure most of you are able to recognize it when you see it, have even battled some of it. But it poses a threat to the kind of the natural rhythm of other plants by outcompeting for sunlight, space, and even pollinators. So we'll talk a bit about how that works, a bit about the plant, and then what you can do and some suggestions that we have. So it was first introduced here in the 1600s or 1700s, and it has since spread to other provinces, but as Claire has said, we're kind of ground zero in Cape Breton for Angelica sylvestris. There are a few varieties of Angelica, but this is the variety that we seem to be inundated with. And it's a large biennial, meaning that the first year it grows, we see the plant is relatively small and it doesn't flower until the second season or the second year. And then it dies and it's finished. So it takes 2 years for it to flower and to create more seeds. When it flowers, that is when it's the tallest, and it can reach up to 2 meters tall, 2 meters high, so large, tall stands. And it flowers late in the summer and into September. And, you know, we know what it looks like, but it has white to pale lilac flowers in small kind of packages of umbels, sort of shaped like an umbrella as a whole. And it grows anywhere, really. It's not particular. It likes dry land, or it likes swampy land. It, you know, it has preferences, but really it's drought resistant. And the seeds float, which is why you see it in drains, because that's how they travel, you know, with rainwater. Otherwise, they just kind of fall down, and that's where they can grow the following year. But it travels easily on water, and then it also is, you know, tolerant of shade, drought, all these things. So it's a real survivor. Like I said, it competes for sunlight with other native plants, and it seems to be delicious to the pollinators because it sort of distracts them from other wildflowers and berries and other plants that you'd want, you know, the bees to be pollinating. So it kind of, you'll see, if you see an Angelica, it's almost guaranteed to have some sort of insect on it and you can smell it. It smells delicious, like a grape popsicle. But it distracts pollinators from other things that we want them to be pollinating, which decreases the density of other plants in an area because it doesn't allow them to proliferate. So it's Angelica replacing the berries there. How to stop it? As you might imagine, mowing works. You'd have to do it at least twice a growing season and before it goes to seed, right? So while it's flowering at the beginning of the flowering period or even before that. But if you take out some of the flowers of the second year plant, it'll just grow new flowers. So you really have to kind of come at it multiple times. It's like it just keeps coming back. Weed whack in your drains. You can dig the plant out, or if it's rained a lot, you can pull it right out. My friend's mother just does that. And then also, if you're really buried in Angelica like we've been, and like through the forest and things, you can cut the flowers during their flowering period, or when you see them just starting to form with clippers or secateurs or a machete, and clippers work the best, I find. And also it's not toxic to livestock, so if you do have animals, you can graze them on it. And that would work too.
One flower itself can produce up to 10,000 seeds. And, you know, it gets carried by the wind, the birds carry it, and I think that's probably why. And we've had a lot of people come to our table to talk about the blueberries and the cranberries and the wild berries that is now, it's affecting them because our berries are kind of low to the ground. And then you've got these weeds, or, you know, the Angelica that grows way tall, and they're not getting the sun, they're not getting pollinated, and it is a big problem. Mm-hmm. It's a big problem here on the island because a lot of people, they go in the woods and they do collect all of the berries that are out there. Mm-hmm. And so they're seeing quite a decline of them on the island itself, and I'm sure it's everywhere else in Richmond County. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So just a word on cutting the Angelica flowers off, and then also what we can expect as far as results from putting in this effort. Like I said, it'll take multiple passes in a season, so kind of cutting off the flowers all the flowers that you can see on a certain day isn't going to eradicate the plant. They'll grow new flowers. So you just have to stay on top of it if that's the approach you plan to take. But also, because it's a biennial, removing the plants that you see flowering doesn't mean that next year won't have flowering. You won't have flowering angelica, right? Because it takes them 2 years. So to really see results, it'll probably take at least 2-3 years, and then you'll have a real reduction. But so it's important not to be discouraged when you don't see immediate results from the effort. Yeah, and we attended a presentation on angelica removal by the Nova Scotia Invasive Species Council, and they were suggesting using black bags, but as we know here, the dump doesn't accept black bags. We don't want to compost angelica, so what do you do? If you cut the angelica while it's flowering, before it's gone to seed, if you look at it, you see it hasn't gone to seed, it's okay to just let the flowers drop. Otherwise, it just takes so much time and space, and you have a bunch of black bags that you don't know what to do with, so don't worry about it. We all know how to kind of make sure the weeds die. Just throw them on some gravel or in a dry spot in the sun. Is angelica dangerous? We've kind of heard people saying that it poses risk to asthmatics, that it'll burn your skin, but for most, I don't know about asthmatic. If people are sensitive to any kind of pollen, then obviously you'd want to wear a mask if you're trying to get rid of your angelica. But otherwise, it's not a toxic plant. It's just recommended that the public take precautions when removing it because it looks like other toxic plants. So, but if you're good at identifying angelica, you don't have anything to worry about. If you are nervous or unsure, however, you can wear gloves. It's not a big deal. Yeah?
That's good.
Okay. And here's some suggestions that we had to raise awareness. That's kind of number one, just for more people to know about it, to know it may be kind of quaint looking, but it's not good for our local ecosystem, and it doesn't help other plants that we value to thrive. So just awareness, maybe an article in Richmond Reflections, or even a page on a website, the municipality's website, about local invasive plants that you can look out for, something like that. Claire was thinking about events in the community to help reduce angelica.
Yeah, we were, because sometimes you see groups of people that says adopt a highway, or people kind of go out and do cleaning in their, on the highways and in the drains. And we were just kind of thinking maybe, we could designate like a day where people could kind of go out before the angelica goes to seed. That's the secret. Once it goes to seed, then it's a big problem. Then you need to bag them and you need to take them someplace that it's safe. And we don't have a designated place at the dump, at the landfill where, but maybe we could work in partnership with you guys to designate a spot, where people could actually, instead of just kind of taking them to the dump, is just to have a designated place to place it there, where it could be buried or something, So it's just some ideas, I know that I kind of took a look at the Weed Control Act, the Provincial Weed Control Act, and it was revised in 1989, but it doesn't designate angelica as a noxious weed. So, but if it's an infestation and it's really starting to damage our ecosystem and all of our natural plants, maybe the municipality could have a second look at that and work with the provincial government. It hasn't been revised for a long, long time. And, we don't have a weed control inspector here in the county here. So there might be some ideas, where we could look at it and see, and public education. I know that a lot of people in this area have beautiful lawns, well manicured, but then you have all of the angelica in front of the drains, and it really is quite pretty. But it's to kind of provide that that education to the public that maybe they should be cutting it down, you know, wherever they see it on their properties.
We thought about creating an internship just to help spread awareness if the young people were encouraged to get involved somehow, at least to educate their communities about Angelica, creating some sort of summer internship. And then there's the idea of renting sheep with temporary fencing, some electric fencing, moving them around that way. But
And it really works. It really works, yeah.
and that's about it.
I will tell you, I've been bagging that stuff because I thought that was the only way to get rid of it. I'm digging it out. I've become a little obsessive about it, but then I'm always like, what do you do with the bag? What do you do with this? So I'm taking this like toxic waste I feel like I'm handling. Now I know better. I'm trying to burn it, or I'm like, whatever. So that's really great information. I'm wondering if maybe we could pop some information on our website, or if we could use some of your images even, or maybe there's the presentation and set it up like a little slideshow.
So there's like a time period towards the end of August, around the month of September, when, the flower kind of dies down. And then it's like what Bridget said, if you cut it while it's in flower, you really don't need to worry because it's not going to regrow. It's when it goes to seed, it spreads, that's when it regrows. So that's the idea of kind of getting that education out there to the public.
I don't think anyone should feel ashamed to have Angelica in their yard because we've been battling it and we still have some. Right? I don't want anyone to think my property is Angelica free. It's not.
I am sure there's going to be a question that many homeowners, instead of pulling it out or cutting it with clippers, can it be sprayed?
Nova Scotia Council of Invasive Species that we had that meeting in June, they didn't really have, there was no spray out there to actually kill it without using like harsh chemicals, so natural sprays, I don't think will cut it.
I'm sure, Roundup and other things would work, but I don't know that that's advisable.
Yeah.
That's not a very green option.
I think you might be right about the ocean side influence too, because the other place I notice it is a lot of it in Lordways, like what I would consider in some places an infestation, and that again is very open to the ocean there, right? So anyway, very interesting. So maybe we'll take some of your information and put it out as educational material if you're okay with that, and we'll get the ball rolling.
You may be aware that at this time of year, Richmond Municipal Council provides financial donations to each of its 5 food banks. This works out to $2,000 per facility serving Richmond County residents. Well, the Isle Madame Food Bank has made another financial request to the municipality, this one dealing with the equipment needed to help serve the Isle Madame Food Bank's customers. Here is how the discussion on this request came down at the recent Committee of the Whole meeting of Richmond Municipal Council.
The group has indicated that they're requesting at least $1,000 and could spend up to $2,000 if approved. But then they stated that although they have quite a bit of funds in their bank account, those funds are mainly restricted for food purchases, and they don't have funds to purchase the equipment they're looking for in their application. So this is really more about the equipment than it is about the annual contribution that we do for food to the food banks. And maybe I'll ask one of, either councillor from Isle Madame. I don't know if you had any comments on this, but I'd open it for discussion at this point.
I think the only comment I would make, Madam Warden, is that our fund is getting, I guess, getting low. But we still have money in our district funds. So I think at this time I would be willing to probably meet somewhere in the middle at the $1,500 mark and take possibly $750 out of my district fund.
So you're proposing that you would put forward $750 from your District 2 funds. Okay. Councillor, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I think we're in agreement with that, Councillor Dignan. That's the direction I was going to take as well, knowing that our regional fund is dwindling and we have several months to go. I'd be willing to go $750 as well from my district fund and get them to the $1,500 mark. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Warden. So I think I'm hearing a motion frame up that we would approve a $1,500 contribution to the Almadam Food Bank in the amount of $1,500 with $750 to be allocated as follows: $750 from District 1 funds and $750 from District 2 funds. Right? Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Councillor Digdon.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. So the motion has been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Sampson? No? Okay. All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion is carried.
2 local municipal leaders recently took part in a week-long conference in Ottawa dealing with renewable energy. Warden Amanda Mumbercat of Richmond County and the Mayor of Port Hawkesbury, Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, were each on deck for the Marine Renewables Conference that took place in Ottawa. And as you're about to hear from Warden Mumbercat, there was a significant focus on renewable energy projects right here in the Strait Area, such as Everwind Fuels and Bearhead Energy. Warden Mumbercat provided a briefing note on the conference to other members of Richmond Municipal Council during the latest Committee of the Whole meeting in Arishat. Here's what the Warden had to say about the conference and about the Strait Area's role in this week-long discussion of renewable energy.
These conferences they're jam-packed with learning and information, and I always feel it's wise to capture it so that we don't lose the thread of of what we're learning as we go along. I won't go through the whole note, but I will just mention that this year's conference was located in Ottawa. The last number of years it's been in Halifax. But that was a purposeful, I think, and a very strategic move for MRC because they are advocating for the passing of Bill C-49, which is the amendments to the Accord Acts, which will enable regulatory pathways for offshore renewables developments and expanding the authority specifically of the Canada-Nova Scotia Offshore Petroleum Board to act as the regulator for those renewables. The presentations at the conference included content related to the development of supply chains, permitting, grid capacity, sustainability finance, resource assessment, and more. Nova Scotia, and specifically the energy projects here in the Strait Area, Bearhead, Everwind, DP Energy, were on, frankly, they were the spotlight of the entire conference. There was a huge light shining on Nova Scotia and shining on the Strait Area. And just also wanted to mention that AGEAR Insights, they facilitate a panel with those parties that I just mentioned involved, and they continue to be a key source of research capacity for the province. And of course, AGEAR is a company that was founded by Scott Urquhart, who was originally from Dundee, but has made a career in the renewable sector, marine renewable sector in Denmark. So, we were invited to participate in that conference, as we are every year, and was certainly glad to be able to go. I did note some of the key takeaways. You'll note in the update that a lot of the activity was meeting with members of Parliament. So, a few that we would have had some contact with were Deputy Speaker Chris D'Entremont, some very familiar names to the folks here in Almadam, MP Daryl Sampson, former MLA Michelle Sampson, and former MP Roger Cuzner, among others in attendance. And we made specific efforts to have conversations with those folks to talk about that enabling legislation and to see if there was anything we could do as a community to help get that bill passed. There is some opposition from the opposition side of government right now, but we're hoping that, by communicating with them about the importance of it for Atlantic Canada and, frankly, for all of Canada, this is a nation-building opportunity. Historic investments have already happened and are continuing to happen. And of course, also, we continue to have our focus on our messaging to representatives is that we need it. We need to be, the marine spatial planning work that needs to happen, the renewable, discussions that need to happen in our communities have to make sure that the interests of fishers and other ocean users are represented and considered in those discussions going forward. So that's been a key feature of our messaging, and certainly I think one that has been received very well. Just wanted to mention from the key takeaways, few pieces I wanted to highlight was there was a lot of talk around domestic market development, which I know has been a concern for some folks for the hydrogen projects that are proposed, because they are primarily export development. But there was really a lot of talk at the conference and by developers around how do we increase the domestic market to make sure that maybe our bus fleets can be green and our, they're working on heavy haul trucking, that kind of thing along, so there's some real work going on around that, and as well paths to market, and Global Insights are pointing to regulatory certainty. So at the end of the day, our message really has been, let's get this enabling legislation passed so that communities can focus on what's important, and that's supporting not just developers, but supporting our communities to make sure that those developments are right for our communities.
And we'll wrap up this week's edition of Roundtable with a look at how to protect vulnerable persons here in Richmond County and across the province. In just a couple of minutes, Council is going to revisit the possibility of a vulnerable persons registry. It's an issue that has come up at the Richmond Council table over the past few months. But before we get to that, we're going to hear from District 2 Municipal Councillor Michael Digdon, who has heard a couple of concerns about the quality of 911 service for people in Richmond County. Here's Councillor Digdon relaying two recent events that happened to a couple of his constituents.
I had a call this week from a resident in the community with a major concern, and I just wanted to brief everybody on the concern, and I think it brings back to something that myself and Councillor Sampson talked about when it comes to the magnets on the fridge, or letting first responders know if you have an issue or a problem, or a health issue. But just to brief everybody, the lady in question had taken a seizure and was on the phone. Somebody was on the phone with 911 for approximately 10 minutes. But then 911 had to let them go because they had another call. So before any ambulance or first responders or anybody showed up, 911 disconnected the call. So again, it kind of left the person in distraught that was taking care of the person with the seizure. And then 2 weeks after, the same person had a similar episode. 911 stayed on the phone for several minutes with an ETA from the ambulance this time, but in the meantime, the local resident reached out to the volunteer fire department, who responded. So I don't know, it's kind of just a briefing, maybe for awareness that people might want to put a second number or a second contact, or somebody who they can reach out to. I know the Almadam Volunteer Fire Department has stepped away from medical first response because of the numbers that they still respond if required or if asked for assistance, but otherwise, if it goes out to the call out 911, if it's an ambulance call out, then they're not tagged in that call anymore. So it's just kind of an awareness to the people that, I don't know. I know the resident reached out to our MLA for a little bit of, with concern that after 10 minutes they were disconnected. I understand, like everybody, 911 is probably shorthanded as well, but.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Digdon. I know there are certainly lots of struggles still within our healthcare system, and I'm glad to hear that she reached out to the MLA. I think those types of information are things we need to share so that they're aware of some of the gaps that are happening in the system. And really, thanks to your volunteer fire department for helping out with that.
And continuing on the theme of vulnerable persons as we wrap up this week's edition of Roundtable, here's a segment dealing with that issue from the question period of Richmond Municipal Council's latest Committee of the Whole meeting. You're going to hear in a moment from Claire Doyle. You saw her earlier in the program representing the Almadam Garden Club. In this particular segment, she's speaking on behalf of the Seniors Take Action Coalition, specifically on the concept of Richmond County having its own Vulnerable Persons Registry. Here's Claire Doyle to set things up.
So in June 2023, the HRM Council approved the Voluntary Vulnerable Persons Registry. This is a voluntary self-referral list for residents who require more support during emergency situations It also provides important information to first responders and emergency management staff and volunteers to help appropriately respond to residents' needs in situations such as sustained power outages, severe storms, and more. This is an issue that has been a concern for the Seniors Take Action Coalition for some time now, knowing that we have many seniors that live alone in rural areas. The question is, has Richmond County considered the possibility of a voluntary vulnerable persons registry as part of its emergency response? Is it possible that the emergency management officer can work with STAT, which is the Senior Take Action Coalition, to explore this option of moving ahead with the registry? So that was my question.
Thank you, Claire. And that's a great question, and I 100% agree that it needs to happen, that we do need a vulnerable persons registry of some sort. I can tell you that at the latest Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities conference, it came up as a question to Minister Lohr for municipal affairs and housing, because there are many folks within the municipalities that feel we could use a provincial standardized registry, right? So that each municipality is not reinventing the wheel in terms of building a system to house this data and how you collect it, et cetera, right? Doesn't look like the provincial government is interested in doing that. They really do feel that it is a municipal responsibility. It is something that we have discussed. We've received correspondence about it and sent correspondence about it back and forth with the provincial government. And I believe Troy has indicated to me, and that's why we were just having a quick chat while you were asking your question, there is a response back from the province, and it will be coming back in our next council package in a couple of weeks. So the answer is yes, we are considering, we have discussed it. We just needed to wait for that response back from the province, and then we'll make a decision on how or if we move forward. There would be probably budgetary implications and some process that we would need to work out in terms of how we would go about even establishing something like that. But very glad to know that STAC is kind of on the case, and we may call upon you to assist us with figuring that whole thing out when the time comes. But I do agree it's a much needed service. There's many seniors in our community, in particular people with mobility challenges, that they're left in the dark and the cold. If things go sideways with a major weather event. I think about the fires that occurred, and we were all very nervous last summer, hoping that a spark wouldn't light here. And yeah, it's a gap in our emergency measures, and hopefully that hopefully we can find a way to fix it in short order. So yeah, thank you.
And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Roundtable here on Telil Community Television. Thank you for tuning in. And by the way, if you'd like to comment on what you've seen over the past hour here on Roundtable, or just make some suggestions for a future edition of the show, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863. And you can reach me by email using the address adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telil Community Television directly with your comments and suggestions. The station phone number in Arishat is 902-226-1928, and the best email address to use is telil@telil.tv. As always, you can follow Telil on social media. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Our YouTube channel features every single episode of Roundtable, including this one, as well as individual segments and interviews from our shows. And if you'd like to see Richmond Municipal Council meetings in their entirety, you can find those on Telil's YouTube channel as well as French language journalism put together by the newest addition to the Telil news team, Jacqueline Gerwar. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you once again for joining me for this week's edition of Roundtable. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.